the Jami Staples stories. We know that you grew up in South Dakota. You were the executive director of the Truth Collective. But that seems like very opposite things, because South Dakota, you don't see a lot of people coming from different cultures, and especially those who come from Muslim backgrounds. And the same in South Carolina, at least from a first glance standpoint. How did you get to be where you're at today?
Yeah, actually my parents, I just told this story recently because when I was 10 years old, my folks took me and my siblings on a 6-week trip to Singapore, Taiwan, and Indonesia. Wow. And that's, by the way, my parental advice for any parent. Skip your child's college fund and take them on a trip around the world, because you'll do more for them and their education and their personhood and character by exposing them to other worldviews. And I was 10 or 12, somewhere between 10 and 12 at that time. And I remember standing in a village, with little grass skirts and, the whole bit, as far bush as you can think of. And we were visiting with some missionaries there. And I just remember looking at the missionaries and going, what they're doing is so important. It's so important because they're drawing the connection between what these people have already experienced of God, and they're giving him a name and bringing some clarity to that. And that's a 45-year-old's articulation of what a 10-year-old was really thinking. But I tell people that I was called when I was 10 years old, because I knew at that point, and there's lots of ungodly journey in the meantime, but all of which contributes to the story of me being where I am. And so I just knew, in fact, my very first Cabbage Patch doll, I asked my mom, I'm like, I don't want a white Cabbage Patch doll. I want a Cabbage Patch doll that's either brown or black, because it was just in my heart. And so I just think that that's true. I think the Lord just planted that in me when I was really little. I just love culture. I love things that were different. And so when I got married, my husband knew, he was in agreement. We wanted to live overseas. It took us 12 years to make that come to realization. But we went to Africa, believing that we were support personnel. My husband's a pilot and I was a writer. And so I was just going to tell the stories of all the real missionaries, you know what I mean? And especially because with us both coming from the aviation background, September 11th hit us really hard. Personally, emotionally, psychologically, and all of those things, spiritually. And so I was just there to support, all the frontline workers. And as soon as we got there, the director from the North Africa regions, which is predominantly the Muslim part of Africa, started connecting. We just started connecting and asking me to ghostwrite for the stories of those who were working in closed countries. And so I got interested in that way. But then a very good friend of mine was doing medical work in the east side of where we lived. And it was predominantly Somalis there. And so I would go with her to the clinic. And the Lord knew this about me, because let me tell you, it's no secret now, you've asked me all my questions and I've bared my soul about my personality. I have a very high justice button. And when I was witnessing all of the atrocities done to Muslim women in that context, it was a faith shaker. I mean, I'm there proclaiming God, but it was shaking my faith to the core. Where is my just God is what I wanted to know. And what was powerful about that season of my life is that I learned very real and experiential ways that a person can endure any kind of trauma context if they believe they're not alone. And the power of Emmanuel, the God with us, is real. It's real. And so what you have to face in those contexts, right, is like, I'm seeing all these horrible things, and I know that I can't rescue them. I won't be able to do that. And so how do I give these people hope inside a context that's devastating? And it's very trite where I come from. It's very trite to say, well, they just need Jesus. But at the end of the day, that's what the Lord taught me in that space, was when they know that I am with them, that I see them, that I hear them, that I understand them, that I have a plan for them and a plan to protect them. When they experience that nearness, they can survive anything. And that's what women from a Muslim background, who had come to follow Christ, that's what they taught me. The only thing that you can do for these women, it doesn't mean you don't work towards what we would call social justice matters. It doesn't mean that we overlook the plight at all. But it does mean that you have to understand who you are and what you have the capacity to do, and to take hundreds of thousands of women out of their context is not realistic. So what is realistic? Giving them hope inside it, right? So I was facing a lot of trauma, my own personal trauma, and watching other trauma on a regular basis. I would have never used that word. I didn't understand trauma at that point, but that's really what it came down to. And then being convinced that Jesus could not only heal the trauma that they'd already experienced, but be present with them as they walk forward in even more traumatic situations, really became very real to me at that point. And I knew this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. I want every woman to know that there is an Emmanuel. And then I've spent the last 10 years listening to them teach me about what that looks like, and actually becoming jealous of what the Lord offers them, the intimacy and the nearness and the freedom that he gives to these women inside these, really difficult contexts. It made me go, well, how come I'm still struggling with my stuff? I mean, I don't even have a traumatic context like that. What's the deal? How come I can't get victory over my sin? How come I can't get victory over my depression? How come I can't? And you look at these women and you're like, they know the answer. They know. So you share Jesus, they latch on, they love him, they learn him, they experience him, and then they teach us.
Mm. So you see all this in Africa, and then but you're in Africa for how long?
We ended up only being in Africa about 3.5 years.
And then you
And
come back to the States, but still now you have this desire to
right.
really reach these women. And what happened then?
Right. So we came back thinking that we were going to go into the Muslim world, and just do get a job somewhere, because we had the kinds of careers that would allow us to do that. We could just go get a job somewhere. We could be salt and light in that context. And so we came home, and within several months of putting out applications and looking at all the details of what it would take, we were starting to feel like there was a lot of closed doors and a lot of no's. And I remember very well pleading with the Lord, like, here we are. We're willing to go. We're willing to go anywhere. You can't say that about everybody. Some people aren't even willing to leave their town or their state. We're willing to go anywhere. Send me anywhere. And the Lord very clearly said to me, will you go to the United States? And I was like, oof, no, I don't want to do that. So there was a period and a season of of releasing what I understood as reaching the nations, releasing that to the Lord, and what his call on my life became at that time was, now you've seen it with your own eyes, now you've experienced it, now you know what I'm looking for, now take that to the church. Take that to the church, build her up, open her heart, open her eyes, and send her out into the Muslim world. And that was super hard to swallow for a long time. But I joined an organization at that time called the Crescent Project, which I owe so much to, because that's where I learned the beauty of sending people out and living vicariously through their testimonies of reaching others. And so I was building the women's training program there in that organization. And one of the things that happened, just to keep the story moving forward, one of the things that happened is we were there trying to equip and educate women to share the gospel with Muslims. And I noticed that Christian women weren't really sharing the gospel with anyone. And so it wasn't really just, I'm afraid of terrorists, as we thought maybe was the holdup. It was really, I don't have a testimony. That's really what it came down to. I know when I chose Christ, but have I been rescued by him? Have I been transformed by Emmanuel living and walking beside me every day? No, I still struggle with all this stuff. I still struggle to believe he's even real some of the time. And when you look at what it costs a Muslim woman to decide to follow Christ, you got to be really careful. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you have to be responsible with what you're proposing, because she's going to put her life on the line, her family, her reputation, everything, in order to even consider him. If you're not convinced, then you need to be really careful, of what you're asking someone to do. And so that's where the Truth Collective really started from. Was we need to take one step back, and we need to understand why Christian women are so afraid of sharing their testimony. And if they don't have one, let's dig into that. And so we call ourselves a First Me Then Her ministry, because really what it comes down to, Travis, at the end of the day is identity trauma. We believe things about ourselves that are not true, and it bleeds out into wounds and lies we believe, and agreements that we make, to protect ourselves from further trauma. And then we end up with these strongholds that won't let go. And we say, Jesus isn't freeing me from this. Well, that's not exactly true. We just don't know how to make that transformation happen. And so that's what we're looking for: transformation testimonies that then will invite Muslim women to come alongside and explore a God who is with us, and what that looks like.